My cheating gold digger daughter-in-law tried to steal my estate for her stepkids, but when I exposed her scheme, she faced a brutal reality she never saw coming. I'm a 57-year-old male and never thought I'd be posting here, but the past few months have been an absolute mess, and I just need to get this off my chest. Maybe I'll get some advice. I don't know. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up. There's at the bottom, some background first, because this is complicated. I own a bunch of restaurants on the East Coast. I'm not trying to sound like I'm showing off, but it's important for the story. I started as a dishwasher when I was 16, busting my butt for minimum wage. The head chef, Tony, rest in peace, my man, kind of took me under his wing and taught me everything about the business. I worked my way up to line cook, then sous chef, then head chef. I saved every penny I could, lived in a crappy studio apartment, drove a beat-up Honda that was more rust than car, and never took vacations. Finally, I opened my first place when I was 28. It was this tiny, hole-in-the-wall joint with like 8 tables. The menu was basically just pasta and a couple of steaks, but people loved it. Fast forward 30 years. God, that makes me feel old, lol. And now I've got 15 restaurants in this huge catering business that does everything from rich people's weddings to those fancy corporate events where everyone pretends to like each other. Now for the family stuff. I married my first wife young, and we had 2 awesome kids, a 31-year-old son and a 28-year-old daughter. The marriage didn't work out, but we didn't hate each other or anything. She moved across the country for some big job opportunity, and we just kind of drifted apart. We still talk sometimes about the kids, everything civil. I got remarried about 10 years ago to this amazing woman, Sarah, fake name, obviously, typing this still hurts. She passed away 6 months ago from cancer. It went from diagnosis to gone in like 3 months, aggressive as hell. She didn't have her own kids, but was super close with her sister's 3 kids, practically raising them after her sister got divorced and had to work 2 jobs. My son got married 2 years ago to this woman, a 30-year-old female who had 2 kids, an 8-year-old girl, and a 10-year-old boy from her previous marriage. Their dad passed away when they were really young, I think, in a car accident. She never really talked about it much, which should have been a red flag, I guess. At first, everything seemed great. The kids were sweet, called me grandpa pretty much right away, and she seemed to make my son happy. She was always talking about how great it was to have a real family again. Side note about my son, he does pharmaceutical sales, makes good money, like $115,000 per year, but his wife quit her job as a real estate agent right after they got married, saying she needed to focus on blending the family or something. Whatever, their choice, right? This becomes important later. Looking back now, there were so many red flags I just didn't see, or maybe didn't want to see, like how she was super interested in my business from day one, always asking questions about how many restaurants I had, what they were worth, and how the catering contracts worked. I just thought she was being interested in the family business, you know? She'd come to these dinners at my house. I love cooking for family, it's my thing, and she'd always steer the conversation toward money somehow. Like, she'd start talking about how expensive private schools are these days, or how college costs are insane, or how hard it is to save for retirement when you're a single mom, which she wasn't anymore. Real subtle, like, so you couldn't really call her out on it. But the thing that really should have tipped me off, she kept making these weird comments about inheritance. She'd say stuff like, when we take over the restaurant business, or once we have access to the family money, always real casual-like. But looking back, it's so obvious what she was doing. The kids were cool, though. Her daughter, Emma fake name, is super into cooking, always wanted to help in the kitchen, and asked a million questions about everything. Her son, Jake, also fake name, is quieter but a good kid. This whole thing has been so rough on them. I guess I should mention my daughter too, since she becomes important later. She works at this big bank as a compliance officer, smart as hell, and always could smell a scam a mile away. She never really liked my daughter-in-law, but kept it to herself, mostly because she saw how happy her brother was. So, about 6 months after my son got married to this woman, let's call her Karen, because that's literally what she turned into. She started getting super pushy about money, and not in a normal way either. Like there's asking about college funds for your kids, and then there's whatever the hell she was doing. For example, she showed up at my flagship restaurant one day, the one downtown, seats like 200 people, does huge business, with this whole presentation about how she could modernize the business. Keep in mind, she's never worked in restaurants a day in her life. She had this folder full of printouts from Pinterest and was talking about how we needed to appeal to millennials by putting everything on avocado toast or something. Shaking my head, but here's the thing. She'd clearly done her research. She knew exactly how much the place was worth. I'd recently had it appraised for insurance, knew about our contracts with major hotels for their events, and even knew about the expansion plans I was considering for Washington, D.C. Found out later she'd been grilling my employees for information, telling them she was part of the family business now. Then she started this weird campaign to get more involved in the day-to-day stuff. She'd show up at random times, try to sit in on manager meetings, and even tried to access our accounting system once, telling the bookkeeper she was helping me modernize things. My restaurant manager finally called me, like, what the heck is going on with your daughter-in-law? The real crazy started around the holidays. We do this big family dinner every year at my house. I cook everything myself. It's kind of my thing, you know. Karen shows up with these massive binders full of business plans, right in the middle of dinner while I'm serving the main course, duck confit that I'd spent like 3 days preparing, by the way. She starts going on about how she's been studying the industry and how she should start shadowing me to learn the business. My daughter, remember, she works in banking, was like, why though? You've got no experience. And Karen just loses it, starts crying about how we're excluding her from the family legacy and how she's just trying to secure her children's future. But wait, it gets better. She started showing up at my house unannounced all the time, like I'd be testing new recipes in my home kitchen. I do all my menu development there, and she'd just appear, always had some excuse, wanted to drop off cookies she baked, store-bought, still had the price tag once, Lowell, or was in the neighborhood, or wanted to show me pictures of the kids, which, okay, I love those kids, but come on the really weird part. She started taking pictures of everything, my house, my office, my cars. Found out later she was documenting all my assets, like some kind of weird stalker inventory. She even took pictures of my mail when she thought nobody was looking. Then she started bringing up my late wife's family, asking super uncomfortable questions about the inheritance arrangements we had, asking about the prenup, trying to figure out if her nieces and nephews were getting anything. Keep in mind, my wife had just passed away. Like, what the heck? Who does that? The breaking point for me was when she tried to convince my head chef, guy's been with me 20 years, to give her copies of all our secret recipes, telling him she was archiving family traditions or some nonsense. Chef called me immediately because he thought it was weird. Thank God for loyal employees, man. Oh, and get this. She started this thing where she'd introduce herself to people as the future owner of my restaurants. Like, my son called me one day, all confused because one of his clients, he does pharma sales, remember, had congratulated him on taking over the family business. He had no idea what they were talking about. This whole time, my son was just kind of going along with it. He'd make excuses like she's just enthusiastic or she's trying to fit in. Looking back, I think she was manipulating him pretty hard behind the scenes. She'd apparently been telling him stuff like, your dad needs to retire soon, and we need to be ready to take over. I tried to talk to him about it a few times, but he'd get really defensive. Found out later she'd convinced him I was pushing him away and that I didn't trust him with the business. Total manipulation tactics. Okay, so this is where everything went nuclear. 3 weeks ago, I decided to update my will. Nothing major, just the usual stuff you do after losing a spouse. Cancer seriously sucks. I had a meeting with my lawyer, really nice guy by the way, been handling my business stuff for like 20 years. Here's what I was changing. The majority of my assets, about $4 million total. Going to my biological kids, some specific stuff for my late wife's nieces and nephews. We had this arrangement in our prenup because she helped me expand the business. And I even set up these $50,000 education trust funds for each of my son's stepkids. Pretty generous, right? I mean, $50,000 each for kids I've only known 2 years. So, my son comes over for dinner that weekend. I was making this new scallop dish I've been working on, and I tell him about the changes. Totally normal conversation. He seemed fine with everything, but then asks if he can take a copy of the will's summary home to look over the details. Sure, whatever, I didn't think anything of it. Big mistake. 9:00 p.m., Tuesday night, I'm in my favorite chair watching the Yellowstone. Say what you want, but Kevin Costner is a goddamn national treasure. Wearing my ratty old sweatpants and this ancient kiss-the-cook apron my late wife got me as a joke. Suddenly, someone's pounding on my door like they're trying to break it down. It's Karen. Her face is all red, and she's literally shaking. She pushes past me into the house, rude much, and starts going off about how unfair everything is, like full-on screaming about how I'm discriminating against her kids and how I need to split everything equally between all the grandchildren. I'm trying to calm her down. Explain that $50,000 each for college is pretty damn good for step-grandkids I barely know, but she's not having it. Then she drops this bomb. I'm pregnant, and if you don't change your will to split everything equally, you'll never see your grandchild. Ever. I'll make sure of it. Yeah, she'd been hinting about having a baby, but this was the first actual confirmation. But here's the thing. She didn't seem excited about it. Like, who announces their pregnancy as a threat? I must have looked shocked because she gets this smug look on her face and starts laying out her demands. Yeah, literal demands. She wanted everything split equally between all grandkids. Her two plus my daughter's two. Her name added to the restaurant and corporation papers as successor owner. The beach house isn't even part of the estate. It's in a trust for my kids, control of all the education trust funds, and something about voting shares in the business. Lady watches too much law succession, I swear to God. I tell her absolutely not. She starts crying, saying I'm destroying the family and playing favorites. Then she pulls out her phone and shows me she's been recording the whole conversation. Says if I don't agree, she'll make sure everyone knows how I really treat family. So I just lost it a little, told her to get the hell out of my house. She's screaming about lawyers and discrimination and how she'll make me regret this. Meanwhile, I'm standing there in my stupid apron, wondering what the heck just happened to my quiet Tuesday night. I called my son immediately after. He sounded weird, like he knew this was going to happen. He said Karen had been upset about the will all week, tried to convince me to reconsider, saying stuff like, she's just being protective and we need to think about all the kids. Then he drops another bomb. She's been threatening to move back to her hometown with the kids if he doesn't back her up on this. My son's basically adopted those kids at this point, loves them like they're his own. She's using them as leverage, and it's disgusting. The next day was even worse. She apparently went on this crazy Facebook rant about toxic rich families and inheritance discrimination. Is that even a thing? And tagged a bunch of my business associates and everything. Thank God my social media guy caught it fast and did damage control. But wait, there's more. My daughter calls me that afternoon. Turns out Karen had been calling all our relatives, telling them I was writing her kids out of the will, they were never in it to begin with, and trying to get people on her side. The worst part? Some people actually bought her nonsense. I got calls from like 3 different cousins about how I need to embrace modern family dynamics and think about the children like I wasn't already thinking about the kids with those college funds. So, after the whole will drama, things got quiet. Too quiet. Karen stopped showing up unannounced, stopped calling, and even started being super sweet at family gatherings. A total 180-degree turn from the screaming banshee who tried to blackmail me with her pregnancy. I should have known something was up. Quick background. About 8 months ago, some stuff started going missing from my house. Nothing major at first. A couple of family recipes disappeared from my recipe box. 35 years of collected. Secrets. Irreplaceable stuff. Some expensive wine vanished. My late wife's old business files mysteriously got reorganized. So I did what any reasonable person would do. Installed security cameras. Nothing crazy, just your basic Ring setup, plus a few extra cameras in my home office. I told everyone they were for insurance purposes because of the wine collection. Karen actually laughed about it at the time, said I was being paranoid. Guess who's laughing now? Last Sunday we're having this big family dinner trying to keep things normal for the kids, you know. I'm in the kitchen, plating dessert, this chocolate souffle I've been perfecting for the new menu. Karen excuses herself to use the bathroom upstairs. 15 minutes passed, 20 minutes. My daughter gives me this look like, what the heck? But we're trying to be polite. 30 minutes in, I check my phone, and bam, security alert from my home office. This woman is literally rifling through my filing cabinets, not even trying to be subtle about it. She's got this little pen scanner thing, found out later it's some kind of portable document scanner. And she's just going through everything, my business contracts, bank statements, property deeds, everything. But here's the best part. Remember how I said she'd been weirdly nice lately? Turns out she'd been planning this for weeks. The security footage from previous visits showed her testing which drawers and doors were locked, checking sight lines from the hallway, even timing how long it took people to notice when she went to the bathroom. So, I'm watching this all go down on my phone, trying to decide what to do when she hits the bottom drawer. That's where I keep the fake documents. Yeah, you read that right. See, after stuff started going missing, I started keeping all my important papers in a bank safety deposit box. What's in my home office? Outdated copies, fake summaries, and some very interesting notes about upcoming business changes that don't actually exist. She spent like 10 minutes scanning this fake document about how I'm planning to franchise the restaurants I would never, and another about potential buyers for the business, totally made-up numbers. Eventually, she comes back downstairs, all innocent, like sorry wasn't feeling well. Meanwhile, my phone is blowing up with security alerts because she tried to get into my locked desk after the filing cabinets. But wait, it gets better. While all this is happening, my daughter, remember, she works at a bank, gets this weird alert from their fraud department. Turns out Karen had tried to open trust accounts for her kids using forged documents with my signature. She actually tried to commit bank fraud. The documents she tried to use? They were basically fake amendments to my will, saying I'd agreed to split everything equally between all grandkids. She'd even forged my lawyer's signature, like that's not how any of this works. When my daughter showed me the forged documents, I nearly had a stroke. The signature wasn't even close to mine. Pro tip, maybe practice forgery before committing felonies. Plus, she got my lawyer's name wrong, it's Stevens with a V, not Stevens with a PH. Here's the really crazy part, she did all this while pregnant. Like, you're literally carrying my grandkid and you're out here committing multiple felonies, make it make sense. The next day, I had a locksmith come change every lock in the house and installed one of those keypad things on my home office door. Karen threw a fit when she found out she couldn't just walk in whenever anymore, started crying about how I don't trust family and I'm pushing her away. Lady, you literally just tried to steal my documents and commit fraud. Trust isn't really on the table anymore. The day after the security camera incident, I'm at my downtown restaurant doing inventory. Yes, I still do that myself. Old habits die hard. I get this call from my buddy Mark, who runs this fancy place across town. We came up in the industry together. He's known me forever. Mark's like, dude, you're not going to believe who just tried to recruit me for some scheme. Turns out Karen had gone to his restaurant for lunch with some friends. She didn't know Mark knew me. We keep it quiet that we're friends because of restaurant industry politics, you know? She's sitting there in his restaurant, drunk on fancy cocktails at 2:00 p.m., loudly telling her friends about her plan to get control of my restaurants. Mark recorded the whole thing on his phone because he couldn't believe what he was hearing. This woman was literally bragging about how she was going to secure her children's inheritance. Direct quote, "By the time I'm done, those restaurants will belong to my kids, not his spoiled brats." She even tried to get Mark to help her contest the will by offering him a manager position once she took over. But here's where it gets really dark. While all this is going down, my son finally grew a spine and started doing some digging of his own. He found this journal in their home office. Not like a diary. This was a full-on planning document. Y'all, this woman had been planning this since before they got married. The journal had research on my restaurants and their value, notes about my assets and properties, an actual timeline for manipulating family relationships, lists of which relatives she could turn. To her side, details about her pregnancy. She knew about it weeks before using it to blackmail me. Different scenarios for how to pressure me into changing my will. She even had this creepy section analyzing my late wife's death and how it made me emotionally vulnerable. Who does that? My son was devastated, but it gets worse. He decided to contact her late husband's family's attorney. Try saying that 5 times fast. Turns out she'd pulled the exact same scam with them after her first husband died. She threatened to withhold grandkid access unless his family gave her a bigger portion of their family trust. They ended up settling privately to keep seeing the kids, but they documented everything with their lawyers. While this is happening, my daughter's bank's fraud department is going deeper into those fake documents Karen tried to use. They found evidence she'd tried the same scheme in 2 other states, like this was her whole business model. Marry rich guys and extort their families, The real kicker, she'd been recording all our family conversations secretly. My son found literally hours of recordings on her phone. She'd record everything, hoping to catch someone saying something she could use as leverage. But she messed up big time because, in our state, recording conversations without consent is super illegal, like felony illegal. Then we found out about the pregnancy thing. Remember how she used that as a threat? Turns out, from her journal, she'd known about it for like 6 weeks before the will drama. She literally waited to announce it until she could use it as leverage. She wrote about it in her journal, timing the announcement for maximum impact. Who plans their pregnancy announcement around blackmail opportunities? This is some soap opera level crazy. My son was going through their finances finally and found out she'd spent like $3,000 on consultations with different state lawyers, looking for someone willing to help her contest my will. Most of them turned her down because, her claims were completely bogus. Oh, and those missing family recipes? Found scanned copies in her email. She was literally trying to sell them to a competing restaurant group. Some of those recipes are older than she is, for heaven's sake. The absolute cherry on top, my son found emails between Karen and this sketchy legal consultant, where she's straight up admitting she married him partly because of my business. She wrote, and I quote, "His dad's restaurants are worth millions. Once I have his baby, they can't ignore my claims to the business." She was literally planning to use my grandkid as a bargaining chip before it was even conceived. Just let that sink in. After finding the journal and all the evidence, we had a family meeting with my lawyer. And when I say family, I mean just the real family. Me, my kids, and my late wife's sister. The lawyer said we had enough for a restraining order based on harassment and attempted theft, plus the bank fraud stuff was a whole other level. But we had to be smart about this. Karen still had no idea we knew everything. She was still doing her weird little schemes, still trying to play nice while sneaking around. So we documented everything. Every text, every email, every sketchy little thing she did. Then, she made her biggest mistake yet. Last Thursday, she shows up at my flagship restaurant during dinner rush, like peak service. 200 people in the dining room, kitchen going full blast. She's obviously been drinking, at 5 months pregnant by the way, and starts causing a scene. She's screaming about how I'm destroying her family and stealing her children's future. My poor hostess, a 19-year-old college kid sweet as pie, is trying to calm her down while my manager calls me. I get there just as she's threatening to expose my illegal business practices to the health department, claiming she's got proof I'm doing all kinds of shady stuff with taxes and health codes. Newsflash, I'm not. Been in business 30 years. Never had a major violation. But here's the best part. She's recording herself doing this, like full-on phone out, live streaming this tantrum to Facebook in a private business without consent, adding more evidence to her illegal recording charges. Lol. My son shows up, someone called him, and tries to get her to leave. She turns on him, screaming about how he's betraying their family, and then drops this bomb, "I'll abort this baby if you don't back me up on this." Yeah, she threatened to abort their wanted pregnancy as a manipulation tactic in the middle of a packed restaurant while live streaming. That was my son's breaking point. He just shut down, called the cops himself right there. While we're waiting for them, she starts destroying stuff, knocked over a whole wine rack, about $15,000 in damages, tried to get into the kitchen to expose our food storage. It's all up to code, Karen, for heaven's sake. Cops show up, take statements from everyone. Karen's still screaming about exposures and illegal practices. They took her in for drunk and disorderly, plus attempted bribery of an officer. My son bailed her out the next morning, against my advice. But whatever, she's still his wife, technically. That's when we dropped the hammer. My lawyer sent her a comprehensive cease and desist with all the evidence, security footage from my house, the forged bank documents, her illegal recordings, evidence of her trying to sell, family recipes, screenshots of her crazy Facebook posts, the journal entries, witness statements about her threatening to abort the baby, documentation from her previous scams with her late husband's family. Her lawyer quit as soon as they saw our evidence package, called us within an hour to say they were no longer representing her. Karen's response? Complete psychotic break. She started mass texting everyone in the family these crazy threats, going to report me to the IRS, nothing to find, but okay, going to call the health department, please do, we're spotless, going to expose my racism against her kids, Going to tell the local papers I'm abusing her, LOL. Going to move across the country with the baby. Going to make sure my son never works in this town again. My son finally grew a pair and filed for divorce and an emergency custody hearing. His lawyer's argument? Her recorded threats to abort the baby as manipulation show she's unfit to make medical decisions for the pregnancy. The judge agreed, ordered her to move out of their house and get a psychiatric evaluation. She's only allowed supervised contact with my son until the baby is born and custody is settled. She's currently staying with her parents, who are actually being surprisingly reasonable about all this. They apologized to us and admitted they'd seen similar behavior during her first marriage, but hoped she'd grown out of it. I will update you guys if anything happens. Edit, sorry for any typos, writing this from the restaurant between shifts. Edit 2, yes, we're pressing charges, all of them. Edit 3, everyone asking about my son, he's in therapy and doing better, living with my daughter for now. Edit 4, the wine she destroyed was insured, thank God. Final part coming tomorrow, wait till you hear her reaction to the criminal charges. Till daughter and daughter-in-law had a meltdown in my restaurant, threatened to abort baby as manipulation, got caught in multiple crimes, and is now facing serious legal consequences. Final update. Hey Reddit, it's been a wild couple of months since my last post, but I can finally share how everything turned out. Grab a drink, I sure needed one, because this is going to be a long one. First off, my grandson was born. A healthy baby boy, 7 pounds 2 ounces. Karen had to give birth while wearing an ankle monitor, LOL, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, after everything that went down at the restaurant, the legal stuff moved fast, like way faster than anyone expected. Turns out when you have video evidence of someone committing multiple felonies, the courts don't mess around. The criminal charges were pretty intense. Attempted grand theft, multiple counts of forgery, identity theft, criminal fraud, illegal recording. Multiple counts, breaking and entering from the office incident, attempted bribery of an officer, plus a bunch of smaller charges. Her new lawyer, like her fourth one at this point, tried to play the pregnant mother under stress card. The judge wasn't having any of it, especially after they played the recording of her threatening to abort the baby as manipulation. The DA's office was really interested in the pattern of behavior thing. They found 2 other families she'd tried this scam on, not just her late husband's family. She'd apparently tried the same inheritance scheme twice before, but the family settled privately. During the investigation, they interviewed her marriage counselor. My son had insisted on couples therapy a few months back. Usually that stuff is private, but the court allowed it because of the fraud pattern. Turns out she'd straight up admitted in therapy that she uses pregnancy and children as bargaining tools. Like, who says that to a therapist? But the real karma hit when they started digging into her past. Remember how she claimed her first husband died in a car accident? Yeah, that wasn't the whole story. He had life insurance, and while she wasn't charged with anything, there were some real sketchy circumstances around his death. His family had suspected something but could never prove it. Court proceedings were a mess. She kept firing her lawyers trying to represent herself, pro tip don't, and making these crazy accusations about my business practices. At one point, she tried to claim I was running a drug operation through my restaurants. Like, lady, I can barely work my iPhone, let alone run a drug empire, LOL. The final straw was when she tried to submit those fake documents about my illegal business practices to the court. Not only were they obviously forged, but she'd used letterhead from a bank that doesn't even exist anymore. Real criminal mastermind here, folks. Sentencing came down last week, 18 months in prison, all but 90 days suspended. 5 years of probation, mandatory psychiatric treatment, can't work in any financial or fiduciary capacity, has to pay back all the legal fees, restraining order keeping her away from my businesses, plus she lost her notary license, which explains some of the bad forgeries, to be honest. The divorce and custody stuff was even more intense. My son got primary physical custody of the baby. She gets supervised visitation twice a week at one of those special facilities. Her parents are actually being really helpful with this. They're as done with her nonsense as we are. For her older kids, my former step-grandkids, the court couldn't give my son any legal rights since they're not his biological kids, and they weren't married long enough for adoption. But their maternal grandparents are helping arrange visits because the kids bonded with him. They're good people, just as horrified by their daughter's behavior as everyone else. I kept the education trust for her kids in place but locked them down tight. Corporate trustee, money goes straight to the schools, she can't touch a penny. Those kids shouldn't suffer because their mom's crazy. The aftermath has been interesting. A lot of the relatives who sided with her initially have been calling to apologize. My son's in therapy, thank God, and living in one of my rental properties while he gets back on his feet. My daughter's been amazing through all this, helped with all the legal and financial stuff and supports her brother. Karen's doing her 90 days in county jail. Her parents have temporary guardianship of her older kids. My son's loving being a dad to the baby. And surprisingly, her parents are super supportive of him having primary custody. Guess they've seen enough of their daughter's behavior to know it's for the best. The restaurants are doing great. Turns out, having a crazy daughter-in-law meltdown during dinner service is actually good publicity. We've been booked solid for weeks, go figure.